The night sky over the forgotten planet was a strange color, almost green and silver, as if the stars themselves were watching the group of explorers who had landed there. The air was thin, the ruins around them stretched like broken teeth, and the statue stood in the center, taller than anything else. It was carved from black stone, smooth in some places, jagged in others, and even in the dim light it seemed to breathe. The humans laughed nervously, circling it, their boots crunching over dry dust, one of them. A young man named Carter tilted his head and grinned. "It looks like it is staring at us," he said in a mocking tone, his voice echoing far too loudly in the silence. The others chuckled, but the laugh died quickly as no sound followed, except their own. The world was too quiet, as if nothing alive dared to make a noise. Carter lifted his hand and slapped the stone leg of the statue with a playful smack. "Just a rock," he said. "See 1,000 years and still nothing." The others shook. Their heads, they all knew the stories. This planet was marked forbidden. Long ago, the ruins were said to belong to a race that had vanished overnight, leaving behind only shadows and statues. The carvings on the walls were strange, filled with shapes that twisted the eyes and symbols that hurt to stare at. But Carter refused to believe in curses or legends. To him, it was a joke, an adventure to brag about later. He stepped closer, placing his palm against the statue's cold chest for a moment. It felt like ordinary stone, rough and lifeless, but then it pulsed beneath his hand just once, like a heartbeat. Carter froze, his smile slipping away. The others saw his face change, and one of them, a woman named Riley, whispered, "Did you feel that?" Carter tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. He pulled his hand away, and the air grew heavy like the sky pressing down on them. They all turned their eyes to the statue, and that was when it happened. Faint at first, then brighter the eyes of the statue flickered open, two lines of pale blue light glowing like fire trapped under ice. Silence fell so deep that even their breaths sounded wrong. The ground beneath their feet trembled. The ruins around them groaned like they had been waiting 1,000 years. For this moment, the explorers staggered back, weapons raised, though none of them knew what they were pointing at. It wasn't moving, not yet, only its eyes staring straight into theirs, as if measuring each soul one by one. And then the whisper came. It wasn't sound. It wasn't language. It was inside their heads, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. A rush of images flooded them, burning cities, endless wars, shapes in the dark so vast they made planets look small, and then silence again. Carter stumbled back, clutching his head. His mouth opened, but no words came. Riley gripped his arm, her own face pale. "Did it show you too?" she asked. He only nodded, sweat dripping down his forehead. The statue shifted, stone dust falling from its shoulder. With a grinding sound like mountains moving, its massive head turned just slightly enough to prove it was not stone at all. Panic hit the group. One of the explorers screamed, "Run!" but no one did. Their legs refused to move. The sheer presence of the thing rooted them in place. The glow in its eyes brightened the ground, split in a thin line, racing outward like a crack of lightning. The air shook with power, and the whispers returned louder, sharper. This time, fragments of warning, fragments of names not human, not meant for human tongues. Riley clutched her ears as blood trickled from her nose. One of the men dropped to his knees, trembling. The statue's mouth opened, just a fraction, a low sound, rumbling from deep within, like the growl of the planet itself. The explorers backed away, finally moving their boots, slipping on the loose stones. Yet their eyes could not leave the figure. Its gaze held them like chains. Carter tried to shout, but the sound died in his throat. The statue leaned forward, the blue glow spilling across their faces, filling the ruins with unholy light. And in that light, shapes began to appear in the sky above their heads. Shapes that did not belong to stars. The explorers huddled together. Fear, twisting every thought, yet unable to break free of what they had unleashed. What began as a joke now felt like the end of everything. The silence after the awakening was worse than the sound itself. The explorers stood frozen, staring at the massive figure that now loomed above them, dust falling from its shoulders like snow. The air was heavy with the taste of metal, each breath sharp in their lungs. The statue that was not a statue shifted again, lifting one arm slowly as if waking from a long sleep. Its joints cracked stone, falling away, revealing beneath not rock but something alive. Its surface shimmered like living armor, veins of light pulsing under it. The explorers did not speak. They could not. The creature turned its glowing eyes down upon them, and the weight of its gaze pressed against their minds once more. No words, only visions. A torrent of images flashing too quickly to understand: burning skies, endless fleets of ships tearing through the dark, a war fought so long ago. It felt like memory itself had scars. Carter stumbled forward, unable to look away. He felt the voices in his head pulling him down into the vision. He saw armies standing on this very ground. Strange soldiers of light and metal fighting against a darkness that swallowed everything he saw. The Guardian fall crushed beneath fire before the vision snapped away, leaving him gasping for breath. Riley grabbed his arm, shaking him. "What did it show you?" She demanded, her own eyes wide. He tried to answer, but the creature moved again. The ground trembling under its weight, its chest rose with something like a breath. Though it had no lungs, its hand extended, pointing not at them, but at the sky. The explorers followed the gesture and felt their blood run cold high above the clouds. The stars shifted. Not stars, they realized, but shadows moving against the night. One shape, then another, sleek and sharp like daggers in orbit. They were not alone. Riley whispered it woke up because of them. Because something else had come. The Guardian's arm dropped and its eyes flared brighter. A wave of force swept out over the ruins, pushing the explorers to their knees. They felt the power ripple into the sky as if answering the shapes above. Carter clutched his head again as another vision poured through him. He saw the same ships descending once long ago. He saw fire-consuming continents, screams vanishing into silence, and he saw the Guardian itself falling into stillness, locked in stone, waiting until the threat returned. When the vision ended, his voice cracked. It was not a statue. It was sleeping, he said, waiting. Riley's lips trembled, waiting for what? Before he could answer, a new sound filled the air, a deep hum that made the stones around them vibrate. The explorers turned their eyes upward as beams of light cut through the clouds. The shapes in orbit were no longer still. They were moving, scanning the planet, searching one of the explorers. Jensen panicked, his hands fumbling at the communicator on his wrist. "We need to get out of here," he cried. "We need to warn Earth." But before he could finish, the Guardian's gaze locked on him, its eyes flared, and the device sparked. Burning in his hands, it was clear they were not to call anyone, not yet. The creature stepped forward, stone shattering under its massive weight, each footfall thunderous. The ruins seemed to awaken in response, walls glowing faintly with lines of the same blue light. The carvings pulsed alive, ancient technology, recognizing its master. The explorers stood trapped between awe and terror, their hearts pounding. Carter forced himself to breathe. He raised his hand slowly as if speaking to a wild animal. "We did not mean to wake you," he said, his voice shaking. It was just a mistake. The Guardian tilted its massive head, regarding him with something unreadable, and then the voice came again. Not sound, but thought, filling all of them at once. It showed them the enemy black ships tearing through stars' worlds, reduced to ash, the same shadows now in orbit. The message was clear. It had not awakened for them. It had awakened because death had arrived. Riley's knees gave out as she whispered, "Dear God, they are here!" Carter turned his eyes upward. The shadows above shifting closer, forming patterns that spoke of intelligence of hunting, and in that moment he understood the joke was gone. This was no adventure, no story to laugh about later. It was the beginning of something far worse than any of them had ever imagined. The ruins trembled as the sound of the alien ships above grew louder. Their deep hum echoed through the stone walls, shaking dust from carvings that had not moved in centuries. The explorers huddled close, their eyes flicking between the glowing Guardian and the sky overhead, fear twisting their thoughts. None of them spoke aloud. The silence felt fragile, like one word could shatter it. The Guardian stood still, its eyes burning brighter than before, light streaming across its stone-like body. The visions returned stronger, sharper, filling each mind with fragments of history they could not escape. Riley saw cities once proud and shining turn to fire, oceans boiling under weapons that ripped the sky itself apart. Jensen saw alien fleets, black and endless, moving like a tide of death, swallowing planets whole, and Carter saw the Guardian standing alone against them, its great form bleeding light as it fought, until finally falling into stillness, sealed inside stone, waiting 1,000 years for this moment. When the visions faded, they were left shaking, their bodies trembling with fear and exhaustion. Riley pressed her hand to her head, tears streaking down her face. "It is showing us the enemy," she whispered. "It wants us to know." Carter's jaw tightened, the words scraping from his throat. "It wants us to understand that they are back before anyone could respond." The ruins around them came alive. The carvings that once looked like meaningless spirals and shapes flared with blue light lines running along the walls like rivers of fire. The ground beneath their feet pulsed as if a giant heart beat below the planet itself. Jensen staggered back, clutching his rifle. "What is this place?" he shouted, his voice breaking. "This is not ruins. This is a weapon." Riley turned her eyes to the Guardian, and for a moment it felt true. The ruins were not broken at all. They were waiting. Sleeping just as the Guardian had been, the alien being shifted again, its mouth opening slightly, though no sound escaped, only a wave of thought crashing over them all. A single idea burned into their minds. Guardian Protector. Last hope. Carter's breath caught as the meaning settled. It was not a ruler or god. It was a soldier placed here to rise again only if the ancient enemy returned. Riley's voice shook. "Then this planet is not just ruins. It is a warning." Jensen snapped his head toward her. "No, it is a trap. We should leave now before those things find us." His panic was raw. He turned to run toward the path that led back to their ship. But the Guardian's eyes flared bright, and the stones under his feet split open, forcing him to stop. The message was clear. There would be no leaving. Not yet. The explorers turned their eyes upward, as the shadows in orbit shifted closer, breaking through the clouds like knives of steel. Their sleek black hulls shimmered against the dim sky, scanning beams sweeping the ruins, searching for signs of life. The air grew cold, the hum of their engines rolling like thunder. Riley grabbed Carter's arm. "We cannot fight them. We have nothing," she said, her voice a desperate whisper. But Carter stared at the Guardian, a strange mix of dread and determination in his chest. "Maybe it woke because we do. Not need to fight? Maybe it woke because it is going to fight for us." Before she could argue, the Guardian raised its massive hand, and a beam of blue light shot from the ruins, skyward. Striking against the clouds, the ships above shifted instantly, breaking formation, reacting like predators who had just smelled prey. Jensen cursed under his breath. "They know we are here," he hissed. The explorers could feel the shift in the air as the enemy ships angled down, the hum of their engines growing. Louder every second, the Guardian lowered its arm, turning back to them. For the first time, its gaze locked onto Carter, and in that silent stare, Carter felt the weight of something terrifying. It was not asking for help. It was demanding it images. flooded his mind again, this time clearer than before. He saw a vast fleet of these dark ships moving across the stars, unstoppable. He saw the Guardian fighting alone, losing again and again until finally it fell. Then he saw something different. He saw humans. Their faces blurred but unmistakably human, standing beside the Guardian. Their weapons blazing, their voices unyielding, fighting with it, not against it, and for the first time the vision shifted from destruction to survival. Carter gasped. As the image broke his knees weak, he looked to the others. "It needs us," he whispered, his voice unsteady but strong. "It cannot win alone, it never could." Riley shook her head, her eyes wide. "We are just explorers. We are nothing against that Carter met." Her gaze, his voice low and fierce. "Maybe we are nothing, but maybe that is why it needs us, because we are not afraid to try before anyone could answer." The ground shook violently. Dust falling from the ruins above, the sound of engines roared through. The air one of the enemy ships broke the clouds, its dark frame blotting out the stars. The explorers stood frozen as the first shadow of death finally descended on the world. The sky cracked open as the enemy ship descended, its massive black hull. Cutting through the clouds like a blade, the sound of its engines thundered over the ruins, shaking every stone and every heart. The explorers scrambled back, their eyes wide with terror. The Guardian stood unmoving, its towering frame glowing brighter, as if preparing for what was to come. Riley grabbed Carter's arm, her voice trembling. "It found us, what do we do?" Carter could not answer, his throat dry, his mind racing. Jensen clutched his rifle, though it looked like a toy against the enormous ship above their heads. The vessel hovered, lowering itself closer. Beams of red light swept across the ruins, scanning every shadow, every broken wall. The explorers ducked behind fallen stone, but they knew hiding was useless. The Guardian's eyes burned brighter as the alien whispers filled their heads again. Sharp and urgent visions struck them like lightning. The enemy soldiers, dark, twisted figures marching across planets, tearing through defenses without mercy. They saw civilizations crumble. Under their advance, they saw the Guardian fall again and again. But in each vision it stood once more, never surrendering. Riley shook her head, pressing her hands to her temples. "Make it stop," she cried. The Guardian's gaze turned upward, its chest flaring with light. The ruins answered, glowing lines of blue racing across the ground, converging beneath its feet, energy rising like fire from the earth. The explorers shielded their eyes as a surge of power erupted skyward, striking the belly of the descending ship. The beam tore through the air with the sound of worlds colliding. The enemy vessel shuddered, its red lights flickering. The explorers gasped as pieces of its dark armor peeled away, falling like burning meteors to the ground. But the ship did not fall. It roared, its engines blazing, and from its underside, smaller craft dropped like predators unleashed, sleek black hunters diving toward the ruins, each one armed, each one alive with crimson light. Riley screamed, "They are coming!" Jensen raised his rifle, firing wildly at the sky, though his bullets vanished against the shields of the descending craft. Carter grabbed his shoulder stop. "That will not work. We need to move. We need cover." But before they could run, the first hunter landed, its claws tearing into the stone. The creature that emerged was no machine. It was something worse. Tall and twisted, its body armored in black plates, its face a mask of bone and metal, its eyes burning red. It moved with unnatural speed. Leaping across the ruins toward them, Riley fired her pistol, the blast striking the creature's chest. It staggered only for a moment, then rose again, its claws gleaming. It lunged, and before it could strike the Guardian, moved one massive arm swinging, down with the force of an earthquake stone, and light colliding with the hunter, crushing it into the ground. The impact shattered the floor beneath them, dust and fire exploding outward. The explorers stumbled back, their ears ringing. Carter stared. At the ruined creature in shock, it was not invincible. The Guardian had killed it, but more were coming, shapes dropping from the ship above, their cries echoing across the ruins. Dozens, maybe hundreds, the explorers back together, their weapons raised. Though their hands shook with fear, the Guardian stepped forward, towering between them and the invaders. Its eyes blazed like twin suns. Its voice filled their minds once more. "Fight with me, not against me." The explorers shivered at the command, but deep inside something stirred. The Guardian was not asking, it was leading. Demanding Carter's grip tightened on his weapon. He looked to Riley and Jensen. "If we run, we die here," he said, "but if we fight, maybe we have a chance." Riley's face was pale, but she nodded. Her pistol, steady, her lips pressed into a thin line. Jensen cursed under his breath but raised his rifle. The hunters closed in, their red eyes glowing in the dark. The Guardian lifted both arms, the ruins beneath it answering with waves of blue light, weapons of energy forming from broken walls, ancient turrets rising from the ground, the air filled with a sound like thunder. Building ready to release, the explorers took their positions, their fear heavy, but their resolve growing. They were no longer just witnesses, they were part of the battle. The first wave of hunters charged, claws slicing through the air, and the ruins exploded into chaos. The Guardian unleashed a torrent of blue fire searing through the attackers, while the explorers fought in its shadow, bullets and blasts echoing against the stone. And though death surrounded them, though the sky itself seemed to bleed with the arrival of more ships, something fierce burned in their hearts. They were fighting side by side with a being older than their world itself. They were part of a war far greater than they had ever imagined, and it had only just begun. The ruins burned with light and fire as the battle raged. The Guardian stood at the center of the chaos, its towering frame glowing with lines of blue energy. Each movement of its arms sent waves of force tearing through the enemy hunters, their bodies breaking against stone and dust. Yet no matter how many fell, more dropped from the black ship above, flooding the ruins with red eyes and claws. The explorers fought desperately behind the Guardian. Riley's pistol cracked with each shot, her hands shaking but her aim steady. Jensen's rifle barked as he fired into the horde. The bullets shattering black armor, though never fast enough. Carter kept close to them. His breath ragged, his chest tight, but his eyes locked on the Guardian. Every time it moved, he felt something inside him stir, as if its power was reaching into him, demanding he be more than afraid. The ground shook violently as a new shadow fell across them, larger than the rest, from the belly of the ship above. Something massive descended, its form so huge it blotted out the blue glow of the ruins. It landed with the weight of a mountain, sending cracks racing across the stone. The explorers stumbled back, horror filling their faces. The war machine was alive. It stood on four towering limbs, its body armored with layers of black metal, its head bristling with weapons that gleamed in the dim light, its eyes a furnace of red fire. Riley whispered, her voice breaking, "What is that?" The Guardian turned to face it, its chest flaring brighter than ever, its mind pressing against theirs. One word filled their heads. "Destroy!" The war machine roared its cannons. Igniting beams of crimson fire tore through the ruins. Walls shattered, ancient towers crumbled. The explorers ran for cover as the beams ripped the ground apart. The Guardian raised its arms, a shield of blue energy erupting around it. The red beams crashed against the barrier, shaking the air with a thunderous crack, but the shield held for a moment long. Enough for the Guardian to charge forward, its massive fists colliding with the war machine. The impact sent shockwaves rolling through the ruins, stone exploding upward. The machine staggered but did not fall. Its claws lashed out, striking the Guardian. Across the chest, the sound was like tearing mountains. The explorers cried out as the Guardian fell back, dust and blue sparks spraying into the air. Carter's stomach dropped. The Guardian could bleed. Riley fired at the smaller hunters, trying to reach them, but her eyes kept flicking to the giant battle above them. The Guardian rose again, roaring silently. light bursting from its wounds. It struck back, slamming the machine with both arms, driving it into the ground. The earth cracked the ruins, groaned, but the machine's cannons fired again, blasting the Guardian across the battlefield. Its body smashed into an ancient wall, collapsing it in a storm of stone for a terrible moment. There was silence, only the red glow of the machine towering. Above them, Carter felt despair crash into him, his knees buckling. He could hear Jensen muttering, "It is over. We are dead. We are all dead." But then the ruins answered. Lines of blue light raced outward from the ground as if the planet itself refused to surrender. Ancient weapons hidden for centuries burst from the stone turrets, rising spires glowing. They opened fire streams of energy, striking the war machine, staggering it for the first time. The explorers stared in disbelief. The ruins were alive, fighting with the Guardian. Riley grabbed Carter's arm, shouting over the noise, "Do you see it? We are not powerless. We can fight too." Carter's eyes blazed. He nodded, pulling a strange weapon from the rubble. One of the alien relics glowing. With faint blue light, he aimed it at the hunters charging toward them. The blast erupted like lightning, tearing through the creatures one by one. Riley and Jensen followed his lead, grabbing weapons from the ruins, the fire in their eyes burning. They fought side by side, not just hiding, but striking back. The Guardian rose from the rubble, its chest blazing brighter than ever. Its massive form battered but unbroken. It charged the war machine again, slamming into it with renewed fury, its fists glowing with raw power. The explorers shouted in unison, pouring fire into the swarms of hunters, cutting them down in the shadow of the Titans. Above, the war machine staggered, its legs buckling, its weapons dimming as the Guardian struck again and again, each blow shaking the ruins until finally, with a roar that filled their minds, the Guardian drove its arm straight through the machine's core. The red fire in its eyes flickered, then died. The machine collapsed in a storm of metal and smoke. Crashing into the ruins, silence fell for a heartbeat. The explorers stood panting, blood, sweat, and dust covering them. Their weapons glowing in their hands, they had survived. But when they turned their eyes to the Guardian, their hearts sank. It stood, swaying, its body cracked and bleeding with light, its energy fading. The ancient protector was falling even as victory burned around them. The battlefield was a graveyard of fire and smoke. The ruins lay shattered beneath the weight of destruction. Hunters burned where they had fallen. The war machine's massive body lay broken, its dark armor scattered like bones across the ground. Yet the silence that followed was not victory. It was the silence of something ending. The explorers stood breathless, their bodies trembling with exhaustion, their weapons still glowing faintly in their hands. Carter's chest heaved as he stared at the Guardian, its massive form swaying, unsteady light bleeding from the cracks in its stone. Like body, its eyes still burned, but the glow flickered weaker. Riley's heart sank. She stepped forward, her voice breaking, "No, stay with us, please. You cannot fall now." The Guardian turned its gaze upon them, and for the first time, the light in its eyes softened, not with weakness, but with something almost human, sorrow, pride. A voice filled their heads again, but this time it was quieter, a low echo woven with pain. "You have fought. You have stood. You are not weak." Carter staggered closer, shaking his head. "We only survived. Because of you, without you, we are nothing." The Guardian's chest flared one last time. The vision pressed into them so strong it brought Carter to his knees. They saw the stars again, an ocean of darkness stretching forever. Fleets of the enemy ships, spreading across it, endless and merciless. This battle was nothing more than a spark compared to what was coming. The words seared into their minds, scout. Only a scout. Riley's lips parted as she understood, her blood running cold. If that was only one machine, then the true fleet is still out there. Jensen cursed under his breath, his hands trembling. "The whole galaxy will burn." The Guardian sank to one knee, the ground shaking beneath its weight. Its massive head bowed, its light dimming. Yet, its mind reached them again, binding them together. "You must prepare you, must stand, or all will fall." Carter clenched his fists, tears stinging his eyes, his voice hoarse. "Then fight with us. Do not leave us. Not now." The Guardian's glow flickered once, more its voice breaking like shattered glass. "No! My time is gone. Your time begins." It leaned closer, lowering its immense head until its eyes burned level with theirs. In that moment they felt not like explorers or intruders, but soldiers, heirs to a war that had begun long before their birth. The Guardian's final vision poured into them ancient maps, hidden paths, technologies buried across forgotten worlds, keys to power meant for those who would come after them, flashes of humanity's ships, rising fleets, standing proud voices shouting defiance across the stars, and then the light broke like dawn and was gone. The Guardian's body cracked its stone shell, falling away in streams of dust, the great form that had stood for 1,000. Years collapsed piece by piece until only a shattered husk remained. The ruins fell silent, the explorers stood frozen, their hearts heavy, their breaths shallow. Riley wiped her face, her voice shaking. "We are not ready. We cannot fight that Jensen," stared at the sky. The black ship above retreating back into orbit, its engines blazing, the shadows already pulling away as if the battle was done for now. His jaw clenched. Bitter. They were only testing us. Carter stood still, the relic weapon heavy. In his hand, his eyes locked on the stars, his voice steady but grim. "Then we need to make sure when they come again, we are ready." Riley turned to him, searching his face. "How ready could we ever be?" Carter lifted his chin. The fire from the Guardians, vision still burning inside him, ready enough to make them regret ever waking us. The three of them stood together amid the ruins. The night sky vast and endless above them, the smoke of battle still rising around them. But their fear had changed. It was no longer the fear of prey running from hunters. It was the fear that shapes warriors into something stronger. Their journey was no longer about survival. It was about war. As the black ships vanished into the stars, a cold truth settled over them. This was only the beginning. The galaxy was awake now, and Earth would have to wake with it.